Is there going to be an end to neoliberalism? This question sits in the center of political theory today, and there's no answer. From Colin Crouch and Philip Morawski to Wendy Brown, the agreement is that if neoliberalism had been going to end, it would have done so during the 2008 recession. That's the moment, they argue, the curtain was pulled back. We all saw neoliberalism for what it is. The promises of stability for men in the 1930s grappling with a world reeling from a series of world wars and economic crises. But instead of foregoing neoliberalism, America doubled down.
President Barack Obama's infamous bank bailout is cited repeatedly throughout the literature as the moment in which America signed on to neoliberalism. The why is simple, according to Philip Morawski and other scholars. Neoliberalism has completely upended the way some of us view ourselves and our lives.
We no longer view ourselves as people, we view ourselves as products. We do things as investments in ourselves. I invested in myself, for example, by attending graduate school. But if I'm making an investment, let's be honest, I'm making a bad one.
COVID-19 has sent the world into another recession, and climate change has yet to be dealt with.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
We are at another crossroads in which individuals can decide whether to affirm neoliberalism or whether to try something new.
Another path is care ethics. Care ethics often gets minimized. It is an ethics or theory that focuses on the ordinary.
According to care ethics, the interactions that we have hold moral relevance. We have a duty to maintain the world and assist those who are vulnerable throughout our daily actions. The private sphere of life that we keep private is important. Much theory of morality and politics centers on abstract notions of justice, liberty, and freedom. Care ethics is unique in that its founder, Carol Gilligan, looked at morality as a happening. We practice our morals. Morality, for many people, is a concrete action.
Care is unassuming.
It happens throughout our lives, from birth to death. We will always find ourselves needing or providing care. Our dependence on care is essential to our survival as infants, yet care is easy to forget. In this way, care is directly antagonistic to neoliberalism.
Neoliberalism as an ideology calls for a small but strong state in which market rules are the norm. The state's role is to uphold and sustain them, and individuals' political and social pursuits are best left to the market. Neoliberalism as a force of de-democratization is well analyzed by Wendy Brown.
For example, political debates frame the state as a business. In America, the Supreme Court rolled back bans on corporate funding of campaign ads. In the majority opinion, Justice Kennedy argued that capital is political speech. As consumers, voting Americans pay for a product.
Neoliberalism turns politics into a business. It transforms us into buyers and sellers in the marketplace of the polis.
It praises heightened individualization and communities taking over the responsibilities of the state.
An abstract theory cannot adequately respond to neoliberalism, which is flexible enough to adapt to ideologies.
Instead, a counter to neoliberalism can occur through a morality that happens. John Tronto, a care ethicist who is also a political theorist, identifies 5 values of care: attentiveness, nurturance, responsibility, compassion, and meeting another's needs. Each of these values has an empirical element. We can judge them in the physical everyday world.
For example, if someone were to come up to me and ask me if I could buy them some antibiotic ointment, and I had the money, the caring thing would be to buy them the ointment. If I do not do this, I would be failing the 5 values of care. I would not be compassionate. I'd be actively turning away, failing to be attentive, failing to meet their needs, and failing my responsibilities, as I have enough money to get this person antibiotic ointment.
Care ethics requires that we trust the other person.
Moreover, it asks that we displace ourselves, that we imagine how it would be to need antibiotic ointment but not to be able to afford it, and having to ask multiple people and to be ignored and waved off.
Care decenters the self, a process which is directly oppositional to neoliberalism.
When we step outside of ourselves, we trust that the other person is telling us their needs as they are. Care ethics builds a sense of collective responsibility and earnestness that neoliberalism discourages.
Trusting a single stranger is not enough to change a political ideology. However, it is a turning point. Care is the power of the weak.
I am disabled. I have epilepsy and chronic pain. I grew up assisting the ill and the dying, and I became sick myself. Weakness is a quality pressed upon us as disabled people and on the people who traditionally take caring roles, who are women, often women of color. The weak, according to care ethics, are powerful. By this, I mean that care is essential to life.
Infants die without it. Although neoliberalism seeks to heighten the distance between individuals, we are innately interdependent. Thus, our needs are often disparaged, and those who are in need of state aid are spoken of with disdain. By exposing ourselves as beings with needs, we expose ourselves as not good products.
If we have needs that we can't treat on our own, such as my epilepsy, and we need state aid, we're failed products. A care ethics approach to the problem of disabled poor persons is to provide state aid. The aid would have to be evaluated as to whether it is effective and retains my autonomy and personhood.
Care ethics, by focusing on actions, does not evaluate the person in need as good or bad. The thing that can be good or bad is care itself.
Good care is responsive and effective. It is also pluralistic. It recognizes differences and needs and adjusts to those differences.
It attends to the ordinary ways in which we can provide care that affirms a person and also allows them to live a meaningful life.
Because care is contextual, we can also think of what it means for other living beings to have a meaningful life.
Other animals need to play and have community, and plants may need to be cared for and tended to, and to be in a healthy ecosystem, to have a life where they can flourish.
All of us, humans and non, need to have meaningful lives. And what is meaningful differs across all beings. Neoliberalism is uninterested in notions of meaningfulness. It is uninterested in this because neoliberalism's ethics are centered in a promotion of the market as a vehicle for freedom and liberty. Neoliberalism is not adequate to the task of providing ethical standards for care because it privileges the already privileged. Neoliberalism provides bad care. Bad care does not acknowledge the recipient of care as an autonomous person with needs and dignity.
It does not prioritize the individual's wellness, both emotional and mental. Bad care degrades a person's sense of self. Good care, on the other hand, prioritizes the relationship that the individual has with the caregiver, whether that is another person or an institution. The person who receives care will always have some capacity for self-advocacy within the framework of good care.
Care ethics also has its own drawbacks. Care ethics can be too local, too focused on the immediate connections that we have with each other and the spaces we live in, forgetting the larger world.
Even when we provide care, there is a possibility that if we are connected to the being we care for, we may start to other them. Care ethics can fall into speciesism and anthropocentric norms, even favoritism of those close to us.
It might be easier for me to assess the needs and concerns of my local community and ecology. As someone living in Louisiana, it's easy to see the problems of the oil industry. However, it can be more difficult to see and remember the problems of fracking. Care ethics is not a perfect ethical and political schematic. However, it holds significant promise because it recognizes that we're not all equal. Very few of us are born on equal footing to one another. Care ethics pushes us to confront this and to wonder how we can be equal. It gives us a standard that we can judge actions by. It also puts moral ideas into action. It is not enough to talk about the fact that we all have capabilities. We have to be able to exercise them as interconnected beings.
Care ethics presents a formidable response to neoliberalism because it rests on weakness. In responding to a political ideology of the powerful, a response from those who are privileged is not going to be disruptive enough to respond to the myriad of ways in which neoliberalism has transformed our everyday lives.
Instead of responding to neoliberalism by trying to vote our way out, care ethics presents an alternative. So let's transform our communities.
No longer think of yourself as a product, but as an opportunity to assist another. By living in the mindset of a caregiver, we are asked to be aware of those around us and far from us. We are asked to constantly reevaluate how needs shift and change according to different situations and spaces.
Neoliberalism is at a crisis.
And by looking at the ordinary, daily interactions we have with the world we live in, we may take a step in the right direction.